at some point getting that 2.15 or 2.17, whichever it was. Yeah. So I'm playing on my Strafe Impale from season 27. In season 27, I went for 2.17 because my gloves gave that to me. This season it's between either 2.15 or 2.18, I think. Depending on how much attack speed you have. So there are like a few different combinations on the Carles, for example. This is the second sanctification I got in the beginning of the season when I had like 19 dust. I spent only two, and I lucked out on a good start, I would say. So it didn't take too much longer to get the life after each kill that I want, especially that because I'm a big fan of secondary gravy stats, and so uh I prefer having secondary as well. But the attack speed there is like something that I normally start out with, and that's like because I also play fire um for the early part of the pushing. I tried playing cold in the beginning. It was fine because a lot of my gear was cold. Like, my holy point shots that I keep are generally cold. But of course, that's also because I ended up getting really lucky with the Stone of Jordan solo primal. So that enabled me to keep the cold ones, as well as knowing that the end game is cold, or at least when your density is so uh like kind of high that the cold comes back to help. Because I've only pushed to 143 done back in season 27, and I found that 144 was really difficult because I was missing this third slot impale as well as just paragons in general. Um, I was like under 2,500 paragons, and so I was missing like between 500 to 1,000 paragons compared to other people who were around my ranks at the time of the 143 completion. So, uh, going back to the Carles, there's like a few different variations. At the end, it's the 10% damage is the number one thing. Obviously, that is the direct increase of damage. Um, and then comes the 7 attack speed if you decide on the Rocket Storm procs, and then area damage is for cold. The other two that you can try, depending on the RNG, is elite damage or cooldown for Captain Crimson double dipping, especially if you're lacking cooldown in general, even after Captain Crimson, because of how your gloves and shoulders might roll. Uh, you may not have the cooldown first because some people do just simple area damage shoulders or simple trifecta area damage gloves, and then you don't have enough cooldown. So then your weapon needs to hold the cooldown. So it'll be 10-7-10, for example. But the one that I want um, back in season 27 is the and I used the sanctification even back in season 27. Even though I had a basically a perfect fire holy point shot, I had to go back to a 10-7-24 life after each kill, inclusive sanctified Carles. So I play with the 10-7-24 because I'm more of a fire player. I mean, fire doesn't need that area damage, but I want it anyways because when you reach that 140 plus, sometimes the density gets in the way. And so I'm worried now because I dropped my area damage completely, or practically completely, because of how my stats roll. Can you do a. Okay. Are you online? Kind of. Uh, okay. I guess I can use the leaderboard. Nice. It's really nice as an ancient, obviously. Okay, that's because of the Guardians. That's fine. And you got the physical resist, so that's really good. See, that's what I want. And that's good for cold. But of course, if you want any Rocket Storm procs, then you might have to have attack speed somewhere else. It might be on a ring or something instead. Nice. I love the life after each kill as well. I need one of these, for example. And then you have the 10 uh, and 24, that's fine. Slow on hit is the other one that you can go for, which is good. Yeah, I need to craft. I need to craft. Yeah, I got it. Um, nice. Yeah, your gear is really good. The life after each kill is here as well. That's really good. So you have already 2 life after each kill. 3. Nice. Very nice. Pretty much same as mine. Mine's just I haven't needed to touch yet. And then you have this. Awesome. It's great. I need one of these. Okay. So here, right? I would say your Guardian Bracer is probably the one of the weaker links, I would say. It's close, but in comparison to a lot of your other pieces so far, I think that your Guardian Bracer is the weaker one. And why do I say that? Is because it has, under 625 or under 600 vitality, and the secondary does not have a direct resist, even though it has the range attack thing that is really good for like optimally like, you know, end game bonus gravy stat. That's great. But when you don't have a direct resist as well, which mine doesn't either because when I recently crafted an ancient for the fire one, I got all resist. So not just talking about like talking bad about somebody else's item, I can talk bad about my own item as well. But so far, after looking at like the majority of your pieces of gear so far, without looking to the last remainder 2 pieces, this Guardian Bracer is the weaker out of the rest that I saw so far. Yeah, so far your bracers is the weaker one. It's usable, but it's one of the weaker ones. Wow, you have flex focus ring as well. And then you're playing this. It's great. Yeah. So I think your weakest piece is the Guardian Bracer, and then the second one is probably the shoulder, but that's like nitpicky because again, going back to the Guardians because of the 585 vitality. When should you? You're already at the point where you can. You're you're already at the point where you can. Because back in season 27, I swapped at like 1.9k. So you're at the point where you can. It's just that when you swap over, right, you have to like do that 400 Paragon roughly to Vitality. 400 to 500, I would say. Just to get yourself around like 825 to 850 minimum. Yes. I would say 850k minimum because then you get closer to as close to the Guardian site as you can without losing damage. Yeah. So I would say like I minimum 775k. I've played at that before, but that was for like I don't know, it was for like 138 I think back then. And then when I went to 140, I needed like 800k. And then I had to squeeze damage, so I went to 810. Like, well, I went from like 825 down to 810 because I had to squeeze damage from main stat to main stat. Only I've given a clear answer. I mean, again, Guardians, right? The bridge between Guardians and Captain Crimson for most builds are like, the standard of approach is the 2.5k Paragon. But you can really get away with it going sooner, earlier, because of um the buff to the 6 piece as well. So you can place earlier, and then obviously if you look at would did it uh well, I mean, he probably pushed with the Guardians, right? No, wait, he already swapped over. Okay, then I'll just do it this way. Yeah, so he played the Stone Gauntlet's way, like you mentioned, but he played with Guardians. So you see his Guardian Bracer, for example. The only thing weak is obviously the .5 crit hit chance, right? But he at least has a direct resist. Yeah. And then he's playing cold, so I can see that Stricken uh is there because um it doesn't burn enough when the elite is the only monster remaining, and then cold doesn't hit as hard on the single target, so then you need the stricken, I believe. That's why. Yeah, at some point. Because cold, I didn't like cold when I played it many multiple times, is that when your density dies and your elite is the only thing remaining, you're literally losing time when you don't have density for the elite in cold. So I don't like cold. Um yeah, I play fire because I played fire in season 27, so I play fire. And fire doesn't die down until like 144 because that was when I began to struggle in season 27. I began to struggle with fire at 144, but I was only 2500 Paragon. Well, basically. Um, Even his holy point shot is a guardian defensive, so you have the offensive one, and then he plays the 10, 10, the 10 dex 10 that I was talking about because he probably doesn't have the cooldown here, the cooldown RNG was sad here. Yeah. So and his RNG of the Carles gave him the 10, so he had to play the 10 10 10 10 dex 10, but in general this is like 10 dex 10 because in the future when he does play Captain Crimson, it would help Captain Crimson's side. Oh man, his the pair of pants is like the weakest link, huh? Yeah, his pair of pants is the weakest link aside from the holy point shot. Yeah. So his two pieces that are weakest is like holy point shot and the pants. Uh I so Stone Gauntlets is only really good, I think, ever since the altar popped up. So before that, you're gonna get hit, right? So it's only after the altar that the Stone Gauntlets really like became like the number one without trying too hard. And Stone Gauntlets is also a little less um, pressure on your own. I I mean, you will probably press the bola anyway for your focus ring, right? But the but what the Stone Gauntlets does is that if you're so used to Fan of Knives from God DH and like other builds, um, I believe Stone Gauntlets mimic the Fan of Knives bladed armor. I just feel like that's something that um goes along those lines, and that's why I'm like even my potion that I use is the armor potion in my save, the other save. I mean, I it's the highest I've ever played area damage. I think was back in I think either season 22 or 24. No, not 24. It can't be 24. It was like it was either season 22 or 25, I think. Um, that I got to 152, like between 132 and 152. I don't think I've ever gone to like like actually 170s like the next one after. So it just comes down to what maps you're playing that requires exactly that. Oh, wrong portal. Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. Like if obviously, right? Obviously at some point pushing is the open map fields, right? I mean, that's not a question, but I'm just saying like to purposefully play 174 is a little overkill. Just about a little bit, right? And then spend 10 minutes. Yep, exactly. So you don't want that to happen, right? I mean, yeah, so in a sense it's bridging your Rift Guardian stat to improve your direct damage versus how much time you are buying from an open field gameplay. Which is why the damage range is like the number one in most cases, is because the number of Rift Guardians that don't have ads, or you don't want distracting ads anyway. I mean, aside from playing so crazy area, if Saxtress is positioned correctly, you can play the area to your benefit with Saxtress, I think, and that's about it. Or I guess Perendi as well, but yeah, yeah. But it is a lot of fun. I mean, if you can get all the way to 174 without losing like a lot of stat, and your RNG is so good that you got to the area damage without going too crazy, then yes. So what here? So the issue is your gloves. Then, like if you have a chance to have the area damage on your ring, then your gloves can go to the attack speed for the Rocket Storm procs. I mean, I'm just saying, if you want to play area damage, right? Saxtress obviously has a lot of ads. I struggled with Saxtress the other day when I was pushing because he was blocking me, but the ads were blocking me with fire, right? So if you're playing cold and you want to play that 174, then Saxtress seems good as long as Saxtress is actually in the thick of it, right? So you have to like position yourself to that point. I mean, it's just the Rocket Storm procs. I'm not totally certain that it's necessary because not many people go for it, right? It's just the flavor that um the flavor of the Rocket Storm procs. That I mean, there are some people that mentioned it, and one of the several people who mentioned attack speed procs was Boiler Up, I think. And then there's probably some one or two other people, but it's not like necessary to play because Cold doesn't really need it. It's just that if we want to talk about Rocket Storm itself, it has breakpoints to enable it, I believe. That's about it. But yeah, if you had one, then it's kind of like, and and people keep decks. In most cases, is because they're just playing main stat as king, right? Because, well, two things. Main stat is king, and then at the time it was guardians. Oh, you meant your Carles? Yeah, I like 10-7-24 myself because it allows you to play fire and cold together, basically. Like as in like it's a good bridge between the two. Yeah. Yeah. And again, aside from the weapon, now the the sad part of attack speed also for weapon in general is that we have to remember, I mean, I'm not trying to like bug you about it and make you, you know, think of it even more and you can't sleep on it now. Is that we have to remember that the weight of the stat modifier of attack speed on weapon is higher than the other slots, right? So like when you do get lucky with 7 attack speed, you should keep a version of 7 attack speed on a weapon if the build isn't detrimental to it. Now, if you're talking about the dexterity part from other people's perspective, there's like two things. One is obviously Guardian equipped. That's a no-brainer. The second part is that it takes a lot to get 1000 dex unless you're obviously a Paragon grinder. And at the point where they look at you is at that early Paragon when you first got it, and you aren't at that Paragon. So then they assume taking that off. And then the third one would obviously be cold doesn't really play with the attack speed, so then the 1000 dex is better. I mean, that's how I analyze it. Again, I can be wrong, but I'm just saying this is how I would break it down. And I'm never at the Paragon where it is. Now, on the other hand, right? Let's say we're playing Meteor Wizard, right? I love um the Grand Vizier, for example, and because it's a two-hander, it has like 1465 intelligence, right? It's gonna be hard to make up 1465 intelligence. So a lot of people will always say to keep the intelligence. And so that is the reason. And then of course on top of it is the Guardians, right? Equipped stats. You're not gonna make up doubling that. Yeah. So it's just like this is how I like break down between what it is, when it is. Yeah. And then uh the fourth thing is why when I gear check people, or for example myself, um let me show you what I mean. So when I gear check people and gear check myself, this is why I left my chest piece open, right? The gold find doesn't help Greater Rift pushing, right? So obviously, if I'm playing Shadow, that gold find will go to life after each kill, right? But the point that it breaks is how you value reduce elite damage. Which means that when you have enough Paragon, that 623 vitality is just Paragons, especially on Captain Crimson side. So that is why I leave it untouched. And so the fourth point I want to make is that generally speaking, if whenever possible, if it's not the very desperate moment, don't touch it. And this is not it somehow relates to the chess piece the most, I would say, that you can leave it as is. Obviously, a weapon is a little bit more difficult to like leave untouched. Um, but in season 27, my Cinder Coat was the same. I had 15% life the whole time, right? I could get all resist, but the LOD Wave of Light has health pool issues. I mean, LOD builds have health pool issues, kind of like Captain Crimson having health pool issues. So I want the 15% life on the chest piece of the Cinder Coat is because also in the LOD Wave of Light, we use the Witching Hour. And the Witching Hour, you can only choose between Vitality or All Resist version. And then because it's an offensive belt, you don't have that 15% life that the belt normally holds. So then I decided to keep by default the Cinder Coat at 15% life until I have enough Paragons to make up that 15% life. Then I'll get all resist, because you can't get all resist beyond your Paragon 800 all resist. Right? So I left the Cinder Coat untouched if I do happen to play on grinding Paragons. Because at some point, that 15% life on the chest piece is easy on your Paragons if you're a Paragon grinder. I mean, normally speaking, you always want to have at least one 15% life somewhere, because otherwise you're not capitalizing on percent gains, right? But at the same time, you can't get all resist anywhere else. So I have like these kinds of like okay. Uh yeah, I mean, it comes down to your all resist, right? I mean, I think it's going to be pretty painful to try to play this version. Unless your 150 plus area damage kills density so fast that you're only having elites remaining. So, because, you know, the whole point of the reduced elite, reduced damage from elites, right, is that you're trying to counter the elite affixes and whatnot. But 15% life or all resist helps you with the sheer amount of monsters that you're currently fighting. So it's just to check how much resistances you have and how slow your kills are to where you're getting hurt beyond the elites. And then you can use this chess piece. If you're killing the density super quickly. Which is another point that you don't want to have too much area damage, because you don't want to kill too fast of the density, because cold needs the density to splash on the elite. So I don't know. I just feel like it's like a good news bad news kind of situation. Yeah. Yeah, unless you have a lot of elites. So if you have a lot of elites, then this chess piece is awesome, right? Because every effect is an elite now. You're fighting like 5 elites without any density, but you have a ton of elites like together, then you're okay because of the number of elites, right? Stack 20 elites.